Hello and welcome into this week's Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host, Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's Cup Rewind, we are looking back at Sunday's 46th annual Gander RV 400. 163 laps, just a bit into overtime, 407.5 miles, around the 2.5 mile Pocono Raceway in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Pretty good race overall, especially for a Pocono race. I think we've gotten used to very lackluster races out of Pocono. Pocono has not produced good racing in a long time now. But while this wasn't a great race, this isn't going to be one of those races we remember in 5 years and go, that was one of the best races of 2019. This was a really good race for Pocono standards. We didn't necessarily get extremely strung out like we usually do on this race. We had a decent amount of cautions that bunched up the field, got some exciting restarts, got some exciting racing overall throughout the race, had some interesting pit strategy, with comers and goers because of the pit strategy, and even comers and goers not necessarily because of pit strategy. Overall, this race had a lot going for it. Again, not one of the best races of 2019 by any stretch of the imagination, but for a Pocono race, this was probably the best Pocono race in recent memory. No cars failed to qualify for this race. 7 caution flags for a total of 24 laps. No cautions in the first stage. That concluded at lap 50 with Kyle Busch taking the Stage 1 victory. Not a surprise. Kyle Busch, prior to this race, has won the last 2 Pocono races, so not a surprise that he is fast early on in this race. Lap 85, the 9 of Chase Elliott wrecks in turn 3. Not a good day for him. No cars out before that, so he would finish last on the day. So not a good day for Chase Elliott. Good thing for all the Chase Elliott fans that he does have a win already and is already locked into the playoffs. Lap 93, we had a caution for rain just for a bit. Not much, just enough to get us under caution. Didn't even have a red flag for this. Lap 100, the 12 of Ryan Blaney spun in turn 3. And that also became the Stage 2 break, with Jimmie Johnson taking the Stage 2 victory after Kyle Busch had pitted a few laps before with his weird pit strategy that he was on. Kyle Busch kind of on a different pit strategy than everybody else in this race, not pitting at the same time as everyone else. So with Jimmie Johnson picking up the Stage victory, a lot of people kind of looked at that as kind of a fluke. It really wasn't, because Johnson was top 5, top 10 most of this race. So I don't think a stage win was that much of a stretch for Jimmie Johnson. He was fast for most of this race. And really, that was actually only the second stage win of Jimmie Johnson's career, believe it or not. Stage racing has really only been around since the lackluster days of Jimmie Johnson's career thus far. So good to see him pick up a stage victory. Lap 115, the 47 of Ryan Preece wrecks in turn 1. Lap 154, the 53 of Josh Bilicki stopped on the track, and this would set up it was either a 3 or 4 lap shootout to the finish of the race. Everybody was concerned about fuel at this point. Nobody was 100% sure they could make it, or at least among the leaders, nobody was 100% sure that they could make it. And then that got even hairier on the fuel situation when, off the restart, we were like 5 wide off of turn 1. Of course that's not going to work no matter how much traction compound you put down in the corner. And of course we get a wreck on the backstretch involving the 1 of Kurt Busch, 17 of Ricky Stenhouse, and the 34 of Michael McDowell. With this whole 5 wide situation, it seemed like, I don't know that we ever really got a good camera angle of it. If we did, I never saw it. It seemed like Kurt Busch had kind of shoved Ricky Stenhouse into the wall off of 4, just kind of running out of room. And it's the end of the race. That kind of thing is going to happen, especially when you're 5 wide off of turn 1. But Stenhouse apparently wasn't happy about this and ends up turning Busch. and Busch ends up collecting McDowell as he spins. So, I don't know, I think it's kind of obvious who you can lay the blame on there, but at the same time, it's the end of the race, things happen, I don't know, it's one of those things that's up for debate. That would be the final caution of the race. 9 lead changes among 5 drivers, if I can talk today. Leading the most laps in this race, 62 laps went to Kevin Harvick in the Gen X car. Yes, he ran a Millennial car in the All-Star race. This week he had the gnarly Gen X car. 56 laps were led by Kyle Busch, so very close to Kevin Harvick's number. 32 went to Denny Hamlin. 10 laps led by Eric Jones, and 3 laps went to Jimmy Johnson. Alright, so Kyle Busch won the first stage and almost led the most laps. Jimmy Johnson won the second stage, did lead 3 laps and was up front most of the day. And Kevin Harvick led the most laps. Denny Hamlin and Eric Jones also led a good number of laps in this race. Did any of them pick up a victory in this race? I'll give you a hint. Joe Gibbs Racing was very strong in this race, actually very near the end of the race. Joe Gibbs Racing had the top 4 spots locked down in this race. So, if you're betting on a JGR car winning this race, you were betting right. Denny Hamlin came out on top in this race. It's been a while since we've talked about Denny Hamlin winning at Pocono, but he does pick up yet another Pocono victory. His 34th career overall victory now, 3rd of the season. And good drive out of Denny Hamlin at the end of this race. Really just had to beat out his teammates. I think Eric Jones, Martin Truex were his biggest competition at the end of the race. Kyle Busch, with those couple of late cautions, kind of got messed up on his strategy and never really was able to get back to the front. So you'll see him there near the bottom of the top 10. William Byron with a strong 4th place finish. Not really sure where he came from. I think he was top 10 most of the day. Well, no, I take that back. He didn't gain any stage points in this race, so I'm not sure where William Byron came from at the end of this race, but 4th place nonetheless. That 24 car has been clicking off some really good finishes of late. Kyle Larson also rounds out the top 5 for another strong finish, kind of trying to keep his playoff hopes alive. Rest of your top 10, Kevin Harvick had to land in the 6th position. Daniel Hemrick somehow finds his way into the top 10 as well. He didn't gain any stage points today either. I didn't think I had seen him anywhere around the front, so not really sure where he came from at the end either. Brad Keselowski, 8th. Kyle Busch landed in 9th. That was all he was able to make it back up through the field after pitting late. And Ryan Blaney rounded out the top 10. 11th through 20th, Clint Bowyer and Eric Almirola, Stewart Haas Racing teammates there in 11th and 12th. Not the greatest run for Clint Bowyer when you're trying to make it, when you're trying to keep a playoff spot and you're down near the bottom of the playoff grid. As we'll see when we get to the playoff grid, he actually lost a few points to the cutoff line with that finish. Ryan Newman came home in 14th. Jimmy Johnson, after winning stage 2 and running near the front all day, was only able to get 15th at the end of this race. And he's another one that not where you want to be finishing when you're trying to make it into the playoffs. Although, even with a 15th place finish, we'll see when we get to the playoff grid, he did cut into that gap just a bit. He came into this race 17 points outside the playoffs. Matt DiBenedetto landed in 17th, and Alex Bowman down here in the 20th position. 21st through 30th, Bubba Wallace in 22nd, Daniel Suarez there in 24th. Michael McDowell, after his brush-up with Stenhouse and Kurt Busch, came home in 25th. Speaking of Kurt Busch, he's here in 27th. Final page, 31st through 38th. Ryan Preece down here after his accident came home in 37th, and Chase Elliott, only making 83 laps in this race, came home in the 38th position. All right, so that's your results from the Gander RV 400. So we're going to head over to the Media Center now, and we will see what Denny and his team had to say after their 3rd win of 2019.
Yeah, I felt like we could. I felt like we were in a pretty good spot. There's never enough insurance in those situations, obviously, but that's why I pushed Denny as hard as I could to get around the 19 and get around the 20. I felt confident that once we could gain control of the race, that we could kind of be as in control as anybody of whatever might come, a caution or green white checker, because now we're the leader on the restarts and those kinds of things. So I just let him go and go get the lead, and then as soon as he got out front, I pulled the reins on him and started putting some in the bank.
Well, I think our guys have done a great job. I always kind of look at how we run as a group compared to everybody else, and we've been strong the last few weeks. I've felt good about that. Today when I went to the drivers, I always go to them before the race, and I always ask them, how are we? All of them said about the same thing, said we're pretty good. And so I felt good about that. That reflects back on everybody back at the race shop, everybody that in our sport there's so many people that don't get to be at the racetrack. We celebrate on Mondays. We put a banner up and get a chance for me to congratulate them. But it's a huge deal for us. I kind of look at it as, why you get on a run at a particular place, I'm not sure. I think our guys have a good feel for it. I think all of our drivers feel pretty good here. Denny's won here. Kyle's won here. Martin's won here. Eric was real close today. I really thought it might be Eric's day. And so I feel good about that. One thing I did want to say to everybody, JD's name is over the door. And when I think about it at this racetrack and all the other racetracks, JD gave his entire 28-year professional life to building our race team. I'm so thrilled that he's on the door of that. Denny had me give him a big hug from behind. That's what JD used to do all the time. And so I hope people out there go to his website. We still have it up. And JD Gibbs Legacy, jdgibbslegacy.com. We've had over 3 million people go to the website. I think it's special. So I just wanted to say that, and thanks to everybody.
No, I never had anything. I tried to keep the tank kind of full and saved as much as I could under caution, saved all I could under green. So if it was going to be not enough, it was just not going to be enough. So I was okay with the outcome one way or the other. We did everything we could to win the race. We made the calls to win the race, and it worked out for us. It was a good race for us where, it was pretty smooth. Nothing crazy happened. We had good restarts when we needed them. When we didn't have a great restart there at the end, I was able to back up that track position that I lost. So it all kind of went to plan.
All right, so let's take a look at your playoff grid before wrapping up here today. The only movement, obviously, on the winner's side of the bracket is Denny Hamlin, now slotting up into that fourth position, one playoff point behind Brad Keselowski for the third spot on the playoff grid. A few movements down here lower on the playoff grid. Specifically, Eric Jones moves up one over Kyle Larson, but they both gained on the cutoff line this week. Both of them just shy of 40 points above the cutoff. Clint Boyer does move up a spot over Ryan Newman, although they are both tied now for 15th, and only 12 points to the good over Jimmy Johnson. They're in 17th. So again, as we talked about, Johnson came into this race only 17 points below the cutoff. He did gain 5 points, even with the 15th place finish. Those 10 stage points from winning stage 2 help a lot, and they could be the difference as we go through the next 5 races until the playoff grid is set. Daniel Suarez losing a few points this week, now 31 points below the cutoff. I don't think he's quite there yet. 31 points is doable in 5 races, but I think he's getting very close to a must-win scenario. And then, of course, I think everybody below Suarez, Paul Menard, Ricky Stenhouse, Chris Buescher, Austin Dillon, Ty Dillon, Matt DiBenedetto, all these guys, they are in must-win situations at this point if they are going to make the playoffs. I think Jimmy Johnson, Daniel Suarez are the only ones at this point that could point their way in 5 races. I don't think anybody Paul Menard or lower really has a shot at pointing their way in. They're going to need a win if any of these guys, 19th or lower, is going to get into the playoffs. And Daniel Suarez is getting close to that point. We've not seen very good runs recently out of Daniel Suarez. Qualified well recently. He's had the speed, and then just for whatever reason, the finishes have not been there of late. And this is not the time of year, especially with the position that he is in, that you want the finishes to not be there. Qualifying is great, having speed is great, but you got to follow through with that, and you've got to actually have the finishes. Otherwise, the speed doesn't do you any good, and you're still going to miss the playoffs. So that 41 team has got to figure out something here in the next 5 races. Otherwise, they're going to miss the playoffs. And I'm going to make a prediction right here with 5 races left before the playoffs. I think the only change right now that we see in the next 5 races, I think Jimmie Johnson does make it into the top 16, and I think he replaces Ryan Newman. I think that is the only change that we see in the next 5 races. Things might get jumbled here and there between now and then, but I think the only driver that's outside the playoffs right now that gets into the playoffs come the end of the race at Indianapolis to lock the playoffs, Jimmie Johnson makes it in, replacing Ryan Newman. I think that's the only change we see in the next 5 weeks. But that's your playoff grid following the Gander RV 400, and I believe that'll do it for us today on this Cup Rewind. Lots of Rewind shows went up this weekend. ARCA for Pocono, K&N for Iowa, Trucks for Pocono, Xfinity for Iowa, and now, of course, this one for this race. We do have a winner interview for the ARCA race, so go check that out if you haven't already. Always a good time talking to Christian Eckes. And then we're working on winter interviews for the rest of those as well. Some scheduled, some not. So we'll see when those actually go up. But Diecast review as normal coming up on Wednesday. Might have some different videos going up this week that we may not be used to around here. Still thinking about what I want to do with those, but might see an extra video or 2 this week. I'm not sure. Of course, Trucks at Eldora on Thursday, so look out for a Rewind show for that. Either Thursday night, Friday, somewhere in there. So, and then Watkins Glen this weekend for K&N East, Xfinity, and Cup. So lots of stuff coming up here as we get later in the weekend into the weekend. So keep an eye out for all of that. So if you haven't done it already, you need to go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, why don't you hit that big thumbs up button if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.